At the end of day one of the 2014 Across the Year 6-day race, Joe Fegis and Yiannis Kouros were tied basically at 136 miles. They had been going back and forth throughout the first 24 hours. Joe took a break. He did a 153 lap at 9 o'clock, whereas Kouros really hadn't stopped. Of course, Joe was doing, you can look at my past things, and he's doing like 10, 11-minute miles. Kouros is doing a minute or two miles slower. I myself got to 68 and had taken a break when I got to the 24-hour period. Tried to take another break. I took a break when I got to 50 also. So what ends up happening is Kouros pretty much never takes a break. I look in here, and in the first 48 hours, Joe had a 153 lap. That's an hour, 53 minutes. Then at 33 hours, he had an hour and 45 minutes. So he went another 9 hours. Then at 37 hours into the race, he took an hour and 20 minutes. And then 42 hours, he took another hour and 20 minutes. So almost like every 4 or 5 hours, he was taking a break. Kouros' only break in the first 48 hours was a 34-minute lap at hour 43, and then he followed it up with a 41-minute lap. Not really sure what was going on during that time. I was out there, especially during the daytime, just kind of on sleep mode, but at night, that's when I kind of did more faster pace because there was less traffic, cold weather, and I just kind of saved myself for the nights. And so on day two, I saw more and more of Kouros in terms of him not lapping me, but me and him getting closer and closer to actually doing similar splits. He's, like I said, now was doing, 16, 17-minute pace in those last hours. So that final night, and then you can definitely see, after that, he was doing my kind of pace, 18, 19, 17, 18-minute mile pace. It was, so it was just totally two different strategies. Kouros was also just staying out there a long time. As I was just saying, he doesn't take any more of a break throughout that first 48 hours, and which is pretty phenomenal. He was so determined. He definitely wanted to win. And if you look at it, they hit 200 miles. Joe did it in 43 hours. Kouros did it in 44. So they were still pretty close. Now, they did 136 in the first 24 hours. So they only did about maybe, if it's a 4:30 in the morning, they didn't at 30 hours. Maybe they did 215 miles or so, which would have won the 48-hour race. John Olson ended up winning with 200. Infamously, Kelly Agnew won with 201, but he was later disqualified because they caught him cheating, and so all his races. So interesting. So they probably did maybe another 70 miles on day two. So they had a significant drop off. And day two is tough. I had a similar kind of an experience. My day one of 68 miles was good. Might have been a little bit too aggressive. I kind of paid for it because definitely on the next 24 hours, I took quite a number of breaks. I took, 3 hours and 55 minutes right after I got to 100, which was just under 36 hours. That break, I remember finishing and just not really doing so well. And then I took another break a few laps later. I just couldn't get moving. I ended up taking a 4 hour. So in day two, I ended up, having 2 laps that took me 8 hours. So you definitely, basically 7 hours off the track. Didn't really sleep a lot. First night out there, of course, didn't sleep very much. It was cold and kind of noisy. By the second night, I completely abandoned the tents. The tents were nice in terms of hanging out in there with the tall ones, but the bigger the tent, the harder it is to keep warm. And it was really cold in there. And so from after the first night, I kind of switched up my sleeping. There was a heated tent that the runners were kind of hanging out in. The first night, that was like party central, so I rarely went in there. But by the second night, it had kind of cleared out, plus I was kind of tired, so I kind of commandeered a little corner space, put my sleeping mat in there, and when I was tired, I would go in there because at least it was warm because it was just so cold. And so I'd go in there, put my feet up on a chair, and maybe close my eyes for a few minutes. Now, if you look at Kouros' splits, of course, they're very consistent, and one of the advantages he had over other people in the race, obviously Joe had a great handler, Mike, and giving him splits and handing him whatever he needed, along with lots of other people at the race, because there were a lot of East Coast faction, and Joe is from the East Coast, Georgia, and of course everybody wanted him to do well against Kouros. Kouros had a couple of handlers, crew, and he was everybody kind of infamously said how he'd be barking orders to them and telling them what to do. But so it's kind of nice that you can just roll along and tell them one lap, tell them what you need, and then get it. And of course, when they changing clothes and stuff, they had it all laid out for them. I myself, took the bus there. Didn't have anybody helping me, so whenever I had to do anything, I had to go in and do it on my own, and it just takes up time, and so that's kind of why they were so consistent. Another big issue I had on day 2 was the course was very dusty and dirty. In later years, they actually even got a water truck, and they would water down the course from time to time. It was also pretty hard. But the ground was, and so Kouros had complained about the dust. He was actually wearing gaiters during the race, which I think was a bit of an overkill. But the dust was definitely an issue for breathing and stuff, and it just got all over you. And then I think I went and ran a little too hard, and so you got a combination of sweat and dust is never a good thing. I usually have pretty good job with chafing and stuff, but you're just still going to get it. The gear I've been wearing for years, and it pretty much works pretty well. So by day 2, though, I started having some major chafing issues, and they were not fun. My shaving, especially on my legs, made it so that it's like when you have chafing and you don't really know it, and you get in the shower and you have that terrible sting for a few seconds. Well, I had that for hours and hours, and it's by myself, so I didn't really have any special ointments or creams and things like that. There's no real running water on the premises. There's one bathroom off the course, not too far off, that had hot water and stuff. But later on I found out, and I went and used the showers every day. But then again, the showers, that's at the Dodger training facility. And being a big baseball fan as a kid, it's like pretty cool to be in the locker room of Major League Baseball. And I'll talk about those later. But so on day 2, here I am, kind of a hot mess and have no way to take care of myself. Thankfully, the Jester was there, and his great crew, his wife, Martha, had some ointment and stuff, and kind of took care of it. And then I also, did a little sink bath in that the facility. And so that's why I ended up on day 2, I did 114 miles. So I did 68 the first day and only like 46 miles on day 2. And that was not, I wasn't too happy with that. I kind of wanted to get 300, and it's kind of sad to get that so little. But, I did take 7 hours off, and I was having all kinds of issues. But by the following morning, I finally kind of gotten things dialed in. I remember day 2 too. I've never done anything. Well, I've always, the couple hundreds I'd finished up to then were in like the 28 to 38 hour range. So I was used to going for 30 hours, seeing the second morning, but doing the whole going the rest of the day. I'm usually, you start at 7 in the morning on day 1 and finish at 10 the next day. And I remember on day 2, just mentally kind of out of it. While I was taking a break, I, of course, stopped by the timing station, and Jamil Curry, who's the RD and owner of Aravaipa. I got to talking to him and telling him how, man, I was having a hard time on day 2. And he said, well, it's kind of like when you do long backpacking experiences, it's the same kind of issues. He says, day 1, you're all excited, gun-ho to be getting out there on the trail. But then day 2 sinks in, and you're just kind of like, oh man, this is just going to be brutal. And then, you have to come to terms with that. And then he says, days 3 and 4, it's just whatever, the trail is your home, and you get used to it. But day 1, you're excited. Day 2, you're missing your old life. You're missing the normality of it. And, multi-day races are super weird. All you're doing all day is just going around and around a looped course. All you're going to do is, just walking and running all day, all night. And that's kind of the reason why, I just finished up, today's day 6 of my second one of 6 days in the home. And, that's why, the first time I did 211 miles. This time I only went 100. But it's just too hard because you've got the real world. You have all these distractions, and you just don't have the motivation, especially when you don't have other like-minded people going around and around with you. So day 2, I had to really get to come to grips that, like, hey, this is my new world, this is my reality. And with that, I was really glad that Jamil told me that, because then I was able to just kind of just grow to accept it, saying, the next X amount of days, hours, this is my world, and I chose to do this, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do it. In many ways, it's not everyone can take so much time off from friends, family, work, and all that, and go around and around for 6 days trying to do as many miles as possible. To wrap up day 2 of the 6 days with Yiannis Kouros, first day was awesome, just watching him and Joe flying around 5 miles an hour or faster, lapping me almost every lap. The second night, things got a little more interesting. People start to slow down. The field starts to thin out. It's still really cold at night. I finally figured out my sleeping situation. Wasn't sleeping much, but at least I had some big issues on Tuesday. Obviously, not Tuesday, but just that second day. And then, of course, at the end of the second day, on the first day, Joe and Yiannis were at 136 miles, and I was at 68. So they basically had doubled my mileage. Now they were at like 205 or so. I don't have the exact stats. And I was at 114. So I'd made up some ground on them, and then I was going to get to spend quite a bit more time with Kouros in the upcoming days.